Hi, I'm Dave Palmer. Thanks for joining me on this latest video here. And I just want to tell you before we get started talking about St. Thomas Aquinas and his teaching on the sin of lust and how he ranks the various types of lust. I want to let you know that if you love the Summa and you want to learn the entire Summa Theologica from me as your guide, please go to my website, which is called studythesumma.com, studythesumma.com. We are right now going through the entire Summa. We just got started, and if you want to jump in on the class, I'd love to have you in the class, and again, with a relatively short amount of time, you can learn the entire Summa Theologia. All right, so St. Thomas Aquinas, and how does he rank the various species or types of lust? Okay, sometimes in our culture today, people are like, yeah, sin is sin, and they're all kind of equal. St. Thomas Aquinas would definitely not agree to that. He would say that anything that would be categorized as lust would be a mortal sin, but there are a lot of different ways that one can commit the sin of lust, and that's what we're going to go through right now. And what he's going to do is he's going to hone in on two particular kind of themes that run through the entire Summa. And one of them is reason. As rational creatures, we have reason. That's part of the reason that we are made to the image and likeness of God, is that we share intelligence with God. Okay, we participate in his intelligence. And the other theme is nature. Okay, one of the principal three themes of the Summa is nature, and some things are unnatural and some things are in accord with our nature. Okay, some things that just violate our nature, and some do not. Okay, and some of the sins of lust are not in violations of our nature necessarily, right? And those are the worst sins. So let me explain kind of what he gets at here. He has an article that says whether 6 species are fittingly assigned to lust. And he says the sin of lust consists in seeking venereal pleasure not in accordance with right reason. So anything that is not in accordance with right reason is going to fall under, if it's a venereal action or something of a sexual nature, is going to be a sin of lust. Okay, and it's going to be a serious sin, but some are going to be more serious than others. He says this may happen in 2 ways. First, in respect of the matter wherein this pleasure is sought. Secondly, whereas there is due matter, other due circumstances are not observed, and since a circumstance as such does not specify a moral act whose species is derived from its object, which is also its matter, it follows that the species of lust must be assigned with respect to the matter or object. Okay, he's going to explain all this, and so let's move on to what he says here. There's a lot here, but I'll go through it as quickly as possible and explain it so that you can better understand, again, how Aquinas kind of goes about explaining all this. He says, now this same matter may be discordant with right reason in 2 ways. First, because it is inconsistent with the end of the venereal act. Okay, the end of the venereal act, as he's going to explain, is to bring forth life. Okay, that's the reason that we are sexual beings, is that we are able to have babies, right? And that's the point. And so this is what he's getting at here. He says, in this way, as hindering the begetting of children, there is the vice against nature. Okay, so these are the sins, the types of lust that by their very nature are not in accord with the very purpose and end, or telos, of the act of sex in the first place. Okay, and so he's going to put those in one category. He says, which attaches to every venereal act from which generation cannot follow. Okay, there's no chance for life in some venereal actions. Okay, these are against nature, and as hindering their due upbringing and advancement of the child when born, there is simple fornication. Okay, and he says, which is the union of an unmarried man with an unmarried woman. Okay, so fornication, premarital sex. Secondly, the matter wherein the venereal act is consummated may be discordant with right reason in relation to other persons, and this in 2 ways. First, with regard to the woman with whom a man has connection, by reason of due honor not being paid to her, and thus there is incest, which consists in the misuse of a woman who is related by consanguinity or affinity. Secondly, with regard to the person under whose authority a woman is placed, And if she be under the authority of a husband, it is adultery. If under the authority of her father, it is seduction. In the absence of violence, and rape if violence is employed. So he's saying there are different types here. Okay, there's fornication, just sex between two people and they assent to it. There is incest, which has to do with relatives, and then there's adultery, and then of course there's rape, which puts it into a whole different category because now you have violence, and he's going to acknowledge that. And I love how he says that there's not proper due respect, in a sense, that's given to the woman, right? And so that's really nice that he puts it that way, because it is an offense against the woman and an offense against God as well. These species are differentiated on the part of the woman rather than on the man, because in the venereal act the woman is passive and is by way of matter, whereas the man is by way of agent, that the aforesaid species are assigned with regard to a difference of matter. Okay, so that's the first article we're talking about, where he's talking about the different species, and we've named a few of them, like adultery and fornication and incest and rape. These are all different species. They have different levels of seriousness or degrees of just how bad they are, but they're all bad, right? And some are worse than others. All right, then he goes on in another article, says whether the unnatural vice is a species of lust. And here he's talking about things that by their very nature can never bring forth life. Fornication can bring forth life. Incest can bring forth life. Adultery certainly can, and rape can as well. But that's involves violence, right? So now he's talking about unnatural things, okay? He says, whereby there occurs a special kind of deformity, whereby the venereal act is rendered unbecoming, there is determinate species of lust. This may occur in two ways. First, through being contrary to right reason, and this is common to all lustful vices. Okay, so all the lustful vices, regardless, are contrary to reason. All right, the eternal law is divine reason. So the whole world is run by God's reason. We participate in that reason, and so the more in accord our reason is in union with God's eternal law and reason, then we are on the right path, and we're living virtuously, right? First, through being contrary to right reason, and this is common to all lustful vices. Secondly, because in addition it is contrary to the natural order of the venereal act as becoming to the human race, and this is called the unnatural vice, okay, which I've already explained. This may happen in several ways. First, by procuring pollution without any copulation for the sake of venereal pleasure. This pertains to the sin of uncleanness, which some call effeminacy. Okay, so that's basically he's talking about masturbation. Okay, that's unnatural because there's no chance of bringing forth life through that sin. Secondly, by copulation with a thing of undue species, and this is called bestiality. Okay, so that's really the worst of them, because it's not even the same species. Okay, so that's really bad. Thirdly, by copulation with an undue sex, male with male or female with female, as the apostle says in Romans 1:27, and this is called the vice of sodomy. Okay, this would be a homosexual act, as he explains here. Fourthly, by not observing the natural manner of copulation, either as to undue means or as to other monstrous and bestial manners of copulation. Okay, so he's talking about just things that even a man or a woman could do that have no chance of bringing forth life. And I don't want to get too descriptive, but you can probably figure out some of the things that he's talking about here. All right, in every genus, worst of all is the corruption of the principle on which the rest depend. Now, the principle of reason are those things that are in according to nature, because reason presupposes things as determined by nature before disposing of other things according as it is fitting. This may be observed both in speculative and in practical matters. All right, now he's going to make a comparison here. Wherefore, just as in speculative matters, the most grievous and shameful error is that which is about things the knowledge of which is naturally bestowed on man, so in matters of action it is most grave and shameful to act against things as determined by nature. Okay, he keeps talking about nature here. Therefore, since by the unnatural vices man transgresses that which has been determined by nature with regard to the use of venereal actions, it follows that in this matter, this sin is gravest of all. After it comes incest. Okay, so the first is something that's unnatural. Bestiality would be the very worst. Okay, and then the sin of sodomy would be after that. After it comes incest, which is contrary to the natural respect which we owe persons related to us. So now he's saying the people that are related to us by blood, our daughters or our cousins or something like that, that would be the next in the hierarchy of how bad these things are. All right, with regard to the other species of lust, they imply a transgression merely on that which is determined by right reason, on the presupposition, however, of natural principles. Now it is more against reason to make use of the venereal act, not only with prejudice to the future offspring, but also so as to injure another person besides. Wherefore, simple fornication, which is committed without injustice to another person, is the least grave among the species of lust. So when a man and a woman who are not married to each other have sexual relations, there isn't a violation against like a spouse because neither of these people are married. And so it's also natural, but it's sinful because there isn't the bond of matrimony. So he's saying in the hierarchy of sins, this would be the least. Now, this is not to say that this is okay. It's still a mortal sin, but he's saying this is the least sinful of all of them. Okay? Then it is a graver injustice to have intercourse with a woman who is subject to another's authority as regards the act of generation than as regards merely her guardianship. Wherefore adultery is more grievous than seduction. So if one has sexual relations with another person's wife, he's saying that this is worse than what he's going to call seduction here, of just seducing somebody who's under the authority of her father, right? Wherefore adultery is more grievous than seduction, and both of these are aggravated by the use of violence. Hence, rape of a virgin is graver than seduction, and rape of a wife than adultery, and all these are aggravated by coming under the head of sacrilege. All right, so you can see that he has left no stone unturned. He is ranking them, and he's saying worst of all are those that violate nature, and even among those, as I mentioned a moment ago, there's a hierarchy. And then the ones that don't violate nature and are still natural, and that it's a man and a woman coming together, even those are ranked depending on the circumstances and the relations. And he's taking the child into consideration, he's taking nature into consideration, right reason, and also the bonds that man and woman have as a married couple, the authority that a father would have over his daughter, and these kind of things. So it's really interesting to kind of see how St. Thomas Aquinas has ranked these. And again, even though this is focusing on one particular sin, you can see how he takes into account the various themes like reason, like nature, in everything that he thinks about. I think this is a great lesson to us, because when we're talking about sins, when we're talking about anything related to the moral life, we have to look at the big picture and see, what is in accord with reason, what is in accord with nature, and then we can start to better educate people about our relationship with other people, and most ultimately our relationship with God as rational creatures made to the image and likeness of God. Thank you for watching. And again, like I said at the beginning, if you would like to study the entire Summa Theologica with me from beginning to end, please go to my website, studythesumma.com. Studythesumma.com. Thank you.